Good morning and welcome to our virtual speaker series, Shift Happens. And we're going to be talking about best practices for navigating the current market. I am Romeo Arrieta. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Marin Realtors. This is our third of 4 speaker series topics this year. We have a full agenda today, and I look forward to getting to it. But just as always, wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar format, so everyone's muted by default. I asked that if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to get to them throughout the meeting. A lot of times somebody will have a question and then we just kind of get to it and answer. But we will review the questions at the end to see if we cover anything that wasn't already covered. I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize our 2022 President Logan Link, who will who'll take over hosting in a little bit, and any of our board of directors or committee members or any of our volunteers. I do want to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. The views expressed by our guests are their own and not necessarily those of the Marin Realtors. I'll even say that they're their own and not necessarily those of their brokerage. Nothing in this webinar should be taken as legal advice, nor should it be taken as tax advice. And also, I want to let you know that this event is being recorded. So I want to take a moment to thank our premier sponsor for today and for their continued support of Marin Realtors in this event. So I'd like to thank Mary Jo LaFay from Mutual Omaha for a quick word.
All right. Hello, everyone. Mary Jo LaFay here with Mutual of Omaha Reverse Mortgage. Good morning, and thanks for having me again as your sponsor. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to say, congratulations to everyone that has been surviving the crazy market. And I know I'm hearing from a lot of people that they're happy that things are settling down a little bit, and we're not having 30 offers that you have to contend with on each deal. So that's good news for everyone, I'm sure. And I just want to let you know that our lifestyle loan, often called the HECM for Purchase, has been revamped. And we have some new marketing material for you to share with your buyers. Anyone over 55 qualifies for additional funds to buy their next home. So if you're having resistance getting a listing because someone doesn't know where they're going to go and how they're going to afford their next home, if they want to stay local in Marin County, maybe they want to move into San Francisco where they can walk to town and walk to all of their activities and kind of give up their car at some point, whether they want to stay local or move away, we can help them with the lifestyle loan. Mutual of Omaha is licensed in every state except for New York. So if you're referring this deal to someone else, I have people buying right now in Atlanta, Nashville, Reno, Arizona, Oregon, and we can help them all over. And we can help them purchase their next home with about a 50% down payment. And then the loan pays the rest, and they never have to make a mortgage payment. And what this means is that it boosts their purchasing power by about 80 to 100%. So we can often double how much they can spend on their next home without requiring them to take money out of savings or take on a mortgage payment. So it's a way for people to right size instead of downsize. I'm finding that a lot of people in the boomers and seniors, they're not really wanting to downsize. They're wanting to move to somewhere, walk to town, maybe with a view that they could never afford when they were raising kids and putting kids through college. So I'll share my screen real quick with you just to show you what we're going to be sending out. I'll send out a link to the home buyer's guide. And this says 62 and better, but we actually have a proprietary reverse mortgage now that helps people purchase their next home if they're only 55 or over. Those loans have a maximum of $4 million loan amount. So depending on the the price of home that they want to buy, they can get anywhere from $200,000 to buy a small condo, or $4 million to buy their dream waterfront home in Tiburon or wherever they choose. So we'll be sending this out. It's only 8 pages, so I encourage you to take a quick look and call me with any questions. I can write up any scenarios to kind of go over examples, how the program works. We do close in 30 days. So it's a great tool to have in your toolbox to help clients maybe be more interested in listing their home if they have a place they can land that they would like even more. So thanks a lot for listening, and I wish you all a great end of your year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary Jo. Really appreciate it. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Logan Link. I'm an agent with Compass, and I'm also 2022 president of Marin Realtors. I am super excited about our topic today because I think this is something that we have all been wondering about. What is going on in the Marin County real estate market? So we're calling this panel Shift Happens. And one of the questions that we're going to discuss is there a shift? What does that shift look like? What are we really talking about? And how do we communicate with clients on this topic? And also just in general best practices as we go into the fall season. So our panel today is comprised of Allie Fornesi of Own Marin, Linda Gridley of Coldwell Banker, and Jenn Pfeiffer of Corcoran. All 3 of these women are fantastic, top producing agents, Marin County agents. They've all been in the business for many, many years. So we'll have a lot of great insights. I'm excited to dive into this topic. And I also would like to point out that Jenn Pfeiffer is currently serving as the president of the Barry's board. So Jenn is the Marin representative to Barry's and also kind of a liaison between agents and the MLS. So shout out to Jenn for that great volunteerism. All right. So Allie, Jenn, Linda.
Good morning.
In my own practice, I feel like I am currently being asked every single day, 7 days a week, what is going on in the market. And I think what we're seeing and hearing is on a national level, there's so many headlines every single day about, markets going down, things are shifting, things are changing. But in your experience right now, as an agent in Marin, what's really happening on the local level? Is there a shift?
I feel like one of the things that's happened is this is the first summer that people felt like they could travel. I have so many friends and clients who've been to Europe and the East Coast, and I just feel like we haven't had as many bodies in Marin County as we have in the past couple of years. So kind of back to how things used to be with marketing. People say, when's the best time to sell? It would be spring and fall. And the last couple of years, it's just been 365 because we were in a kind of a different bubble of life and how it all worked. So now I feel like the summer might be a little bit slow, and now everyone's talking about after Labor Day, more listings coming on. Buyers are in the mindset. I had a listing in San Anselmo, and buyers actually said, oh my gosh, this is such a cute house, but we keep hearing more's coming on in September. So we're just kind of getting started. We want to see what's coming. So I feel optimistic that, if we stick to our same practices of prepping a house and pricing it right, the buyers are there and they're going to be there. That's how I feel about it.
I agree. I think that we're seeing a lot of feedback from the media. Oh, there's a recession, there's a crash, there's a huge shift in the market. I think what we're really seeing is, yes, it is a shift, but I think it's kind of shifting more back into our pre-COVID seasonality. The market updates that have been shared throughout Marin over the past 2 months are accurate in the sense that, yes, there was a decline in sales, but that's also coupled with that people were traveling and out of town. That's normal for us as realtors who did business pre-COVID. So I think that, yes, there is a shift that's happening, but that's standard and very normal for us. And it's just kind of going back to the way that things were. And even August is proving to be much busier than June and July. And I think that you're right that September is going to be much busier after Labor Day, as we've seen, pre-COVID.
I think the shift happened May of 2020. That's when the shift happened, right? It went into hyper overdrive. Mm-hmm. And now we're just realizing this is just a much more normal market. So it's funny, the headlines didn't really, well, I guess there were headlines that, was talking about the crazy market that we just experienced. But if you're looking at the numbers, definitely. I mean, year over year, we're down. Listings are down 23%. Pending listings are down 22%. Active listings are down 22%. The only thing that's up is the month supply of inventory, and we're at like 1.8 months right now. I think that, I don't know, I think sellers are always a little bit late in understanding that the market has changed a little bit, and buyers are early to understand that. So it's all about how we're going to communicate with our clients about this different market that we're in right now.
That's an interesting point, that buyers often see what benefits a buyer and sellers often see what benefits a seller.
Yeah.
Although I guess it also depends on personality types, because I feel like I have some sellers right now who I'm just saying, don't panic, like we're going to be okay. It's an interesting thing, these transitional times, and what it does to everybody psychologically.
Absolutely. And what it does to agents too.
Totally.
Agents get totally wrapped up in their head and walk around like the sky is falling, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
No, and I think a couple of interesting things at the kind of mid-June point, there were some buyers that would be like, you know what, I'm so sick of losing out. I'm not going to write an offer. We just don't have the bandwidth for it. I bet we're not going to get it. And so the house might still sell for the same price it would have if we had 7 offers and we only got 5 or 4. But fewer buyers. They're feeling like there's a little fatigue about this whole thing. Why go through it? So I think we see some of these numbers of, 8 and 10 offers per listing, and then it kind of whittled down. And part of that is just because some buyers have been through it 4 times and just figured, I see the writing on the wall, I'm not going through it again. And so that starts to say, ooh, look, instead of 7 offers, we're starting to see 3 and 4. And I think as realtors, we have to be careful too in how we, translate the information to ourselves and each other, because, things happen. I have been, I started selling real estate when I was 7 years old. I was a child prodigy. That's why I've been doing this 32 years and I'm still 39. But I have seen so many markets, and the normal, I would say, it used to be like 2 years of a run up and then it would plateau, and 2 years of a run up and plateau. And then we started to go into these cycles where it would just run and run and run. And then 2008 happened, which adjusted. And when you think about it, even then, people who bought in the years running up were like, oh my God, this is a panic. We've got the market falling apart. And then look at what happened to it once it took its steps and did its thing and recovered. We're in the Bay Area. There's so much to offer here with open space and beaches and just all that we have. And then and close to San Francisco, and the market just kind of does its thing. It resettles and goes, here's where and then the whole country appreciated during COVID, and with phenomenal, record-breaking numbers everywhere. And I think that can't go on forever either, because we're going to spend $5 million on a, 1-bedroom condo, and that can't. So I think it just kind of finds its way, and interest rates are still fantastic, even though they're higher than 3%. They're still so good. And I do want to say, for me, I think part of keeping everybody calm is over communication and telling sellers, here's what we see in the market right now. And let's not forget what works, and prepping your house. And, and I think after we see a huge success, some sellers start to think, well, maybe I don't have to do all that work. Do I really? Maybe I don't have to do gardening. Maybe I don't have to, do I really have to repaint everything? And yes, you do. And you still have to price it well. And we don't panic. We stay the course, stay with what we know works. And then for buyers, help them understand that historically 5%, even 6% is a great rate. And maybe there's a reality of what approval they can do, but there's also a good reason to stay in touch with your loan broker, because there's other options. Maybe they don't do the 30-year fix, they do, something else, whatever, that makes it still approachable for them. But I just feel very calm about the Marin market and what we have to offer and what's going to happen this fall.
I agree. I think we're still in a very healthy market. It's just interesting coming off of this, kind of riding the end of this wave of such a frenzied market that was really a housing crisis created by a pandemic, and people were working from home, and their whole lives changed. And now that the world is starting to go back to normal and interest rates are going back up to still a fantastic rate, I think that, from a buyer's perspective, I think a lot of buyers were very spoiled by these 3% rates, and they were like, oh, let's buy. And that's also what created the prices with the houses with multiple offers and going crazy over asking. And then sellers were kind of spoiled by thinking that they could literally throw their house on the market without doing anything, and it would get multiple offers and sell 50% over asking. That was great. That, to me, in my eyes, was kind of an abnormal market. Now that we're starting to see a shift happening back into a stable, normal market, everybody's kind of nervous and pulling back, but our pricing is still up 16% from this time last year. So while sellers might not see 13 offers on their house, and maybe it might take a little bit longer than 2 days to get into contract, they're still getting fantastic prices for their houses. And for buyers, maybe they're competing with less people. They're still paying a good price for the house. They're still getting a great rate. And I think that this is still a fantastic time to buy and sell. I think once people start realizing that this is still a great market, and it may not, who knows, ever go back into that frenzied state of urgent panic, then I think we're going to start seeing some more inventory come on. But still, there's very few inventory out there on the market right now.
Well, and I had said, I posted on Facebook a few months ago, marry the house and date the rate. And I think that that's true, right? It's hard to find the one. And when you find that one, you want to put a ring on it, right? So get in. And if your interest rate is a little bit higher than you expected, that's okay. It'll come down at some point. I remember the agents after 9/11 panicking, and they said that the market's going to crash. But I mean, it got wobbly for a little bit, then we readjusted. And I think if you bought a house anywhere around that time, it's likely doubled since then, right? So just stay the course.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So what would you recommend to a seller right now? Clients thinking of putting their house on the market, they say, A, is now an okay time, or should I be waiting until the spring? Or should I be waiting until who knows when? And B, is the approach of selling a property right now is the same as the spring? Are you doing anything differently?
I think it's a fantastic time to sell a house. There's still so little inventory, and there are tons of buyers out there. We are still hearing properties getting multiple offers and going significantly over asking. But I will say that buyers are being a little bit more selective, because now that they're not rushing to get into a property because of some crazy low interest rate, they're being more selective on their choices. And I think that prep is more important than ever. Buyers very rarely want to do work. They want more of a turnkey property. So painting and staging at the minimum is crucial, and making your house really shine on the market. I think that also, that coupled with proper market timing, fall, not going on, the day before Christmas, or waiting until spring when there's low inventory, maybe catching that wave before all the inventory comes at the typical selling season, and proper pricing strategy are all going to play a really big impact in the success of a listing. But I think it's still a fantastic time to sell a house. There's so many buyers out there looking to move.
So I completely agree. I think it's a great time, and fall always has been a good time to sell a house in Marin. But the one thing that I'm starting to think about is counseling our sellers that maybe we don't do one brokers in one weekend and here offers Tuesday. It may be that we want to prep them, mentally to have a 10 to 12 day market exposure, just because buyers are, some of them are in the mindset of, let's see when the good stuff's going to be coming, and let's see when it's coming. There's more, or there, it's a funny thing that you have spring buyers, and then you've got, new people entering the market in the fall. And some buyers left over from the spring that didn't find yet and had a goal to buy a house this year. So it's an interesting time. And I feel like there is an energy in the fall market. But I am going to just, talk to my sellers about timing, about expectation of timing. And the other thing with pricing, I think this is an interesting conversation for all of us to have, because, you know, I don't know that if we think it's going to sell for 2.2, do we put it on at 1.795, you know, and let the market adjust? I don't know if we want to do it as drastically as that. And yet I certainly want to caution against, oh, if we think it'll sell for 2.2, let's not put it on at 2.4 and let the market and get, I think we'll end up down at the 1.795. So I just think I think it's a little bit of a time to nuance what we're doing with pricing, but stick to, you know, stay the course with our prep. And I think our job is going to get more interesting with our chance to share our knowledge and expertise and network and take information back to our clients, both sellers and buyers, helping them feel comfortable and expecting the right
I
thing.
agree with you. I think that conversation that you're talking about having with your sellers regards into, you know, market timing. Do you give it, you know, the typical 7 days on market, or do you wait 2 weekends? Or the pricing strategy, are you guaranteed multiple offers, or are you pricing because what if you only get one offer? I think that conversation is so property specific. It is so location specific. I think that in COVID, because everybody needed to move, they were no longer discerning between a property in the flats versus a property up in the hills. And pre-COVID, there was a clear difference between properties way up in the hills versus down in the flats, closer, walkable to amenities. Or the further you go up the 101, usually the lower the price per square foot. And in the last 2 years, we've seen that level out in a lot of ways. And we're very surprised by how active these properties, like, for example, way up on Panoramic, we're going $1 million over asking because commute was no longer a factor and going to the office was no longer a factor. So people were definitely expanding their search to farther locations and really increasing the pricing in those areas. Well, now we're starting to see that consideration come back. Now people are going back to the office. So now we're seeing some properties up in the hillsides maybe get some fewer offers and go for less. So I think momentum is still important when you go on the market. You always kind of risk, well, if I keep my listing on for 2 weeks and another property comes up, is a buyer going to go, oh, wait, no, that one. You want to keep their attention focused on your listing. And so I think, again, but if it's like a hot property down in the flats that you know is going to get multiple offers, then your pricing strategy really changes from, if you're maybe more up in the hills like before, should you price protect a little bit more because you're not always guaranteed the multiple offer anymore.
Absolutely. I think if I were meeting with sellers right now, I would nail down pricing strategy. And I would price under comps, because comps are pretty much useless right now. Going back 3 to 6 months, it's just not the same market. So if they really wanted to start higher than what I thought it should be priced at fair market value, I would ensure that the listing agreement had a price reduction clause in there. And I would even sort of print out the modification of terms and have them sign that as well, just so you can say after 30 days, if we're not, we haven't received an offer and we're not in escrow, price reduction just comes along. I think pricing is that key. And I think it's going to be super imperative for sellers to get the message in the fall that they need to price well. Because what's going to happen is, if it doesn't sell and if they're hanging on for that, golden, buyer to come in and it doesn't happen, it's just they're going to be the dregs of, the buyers are going to go look at it and say, oh, it's been on the market for 75 days. I can make a play for it at, whatever, 15%, less than asking price. So I think it's key.
That brings up a really good point, I think, in the perspective that buyers have had for 2 years, is that and this is also how we've had to coach our clients, because it was the reality of, these are listing prices. When a property hits the market, you can basically assume that it's going to sell around 20% over asking. Well, that may still be the case on certain listings, but it's not the case on many other listings. We're seeing certain listings sell under asking, or sitting on the market and having price reductions, or being able to get into contract below where they're listed at. So I think it's going to be very interesting how we communicate with our buyers more today and really touch base with the listing agent on the other side and say, hey, what's your activity level like? And keep following up, because there could be more opportunities for our buyers than we realize. And we don't want our buyers to be ignoring certain listings because they just automatically assume it's not within reach. Well, I think that we're seeing opportunities, and it's up to us to communicate more during this next 6 months as we see a little bit of a shift happening, to make sure that our buyers are watching the full market and getting those opportunities and not letting them slip through their fingers.
Well, and can I just say one more thing, and I just jump in?
Go.
I think that we have to figure out what our sellers want. And this is to Linda's point, but they might say, you know, I want 1.5 because my neighbor got 1.5 last year when they sold the market. And you could say, okay, well, let's strategize on how to get there, or it's that price is not reachable at this point in time, but let's see what we can do. You might want 1.5, but that doesn't factor in the higher interest rates. I mean, rates have doubled from, you know, this time last year. That causes buyers to lose purchase power. And then also the buyers' feelings of being emboldened now, right? They're hearing their friends going out and making offers on properties, and they're the only offer, or maybe there was just one other offer, not 6 or 12 or 25. So it's emboldened these buyers to go out. They have contingencies now. Buyers haven't had contingencies in a couple of years. So we really need to do our best to manage expectations of both the sellers and the buyers right now. And it's kind of a shifting mindset, right? That mindset that everybody's been stuck in for the last couple of years, like Allie said, that's got to shift.
As I'm thinking right now, listening to you guys in your brilliance, is part of it, you know, maybe we go back to, and not that we've stopped this, but pre-marketing. So when we're getting a house ready for the market and before actually putting it on, having, you know, this is what my practice used to be, have a week where I would let a lot of my colleagues, Top Agent Network, whatever it was, that I would have early showings, let early showings happen, not with the goal to sell pre-market, but just to let people in the door. And then when we go on the market, those people, there are new people coming, but also repeat viewings for the ones who saw it during the pre-marketing week. And that might be a really good practice to go back to right now. I have a listing coming up that I thought, you know what, it's good timing anyway. I'm going to do photographs. It'll be ready, but I really want to pump up the marketing that I'm going to do on this particular property. And that week I'll start letting people see it, and then it'll come on. So it'll give more market exposure, which I think is a key for us right now, giving buyers more time.
Yeah. That's a good point, Linda. I mean, in some ways, if I look back at the market in the last 2 years, the COVID market, we'll call it, the one thing, if I had to describe it in 2 words, I would say fast-paced, incredibly fast-paced. And what's been interesting about the sort of fast-paced thing is, at least me personally, I feel like we kind of have been forced to skip all of these steps, right? So it's like the whole concept of pre-market, maybe come on to MLS coming soon first, maybe speak to some networking groups and things like that and share it ahead of time. And then doing a pricing, like a camo, a broker's pricing opinion, and actually getting the feedback of colleagues before coming onto the market and really having those in-depth conversations with sellers and that kind of thing. And then coming to market and actually being on for the full amount of time and all of these things. It's interesting. It sounds so basic, like saying it now. It's like, well, of course, isn't that what we do as listing agents? But truth be told, with things moving so quickly, that was almost not a thing. Yeah. It's kind of an interesting one. Yeah. So in terms of buyers, do you anticipate any change in the way that you approach your buyers this fall?
I mean, not personally. It's all about trying to find them the house they want. And it's so exciting when you do, to say, okay, forget everything, come see this one. And it's very exciting. And I do think, unfortunately, for buyers, if you're representing a buyer, if it is that has that vibe or that special, something, it's still going to get multiple offers. It's still going to be, okay, where do we need to come in? Those things are still going to be happening. And on the converse, I guess if there's a house where the seller did say, you know what, I don't buy all this. I'm not going to stage. I'm not going to refresh. I just want to sell my house. It only takes one, that whole seller mindset of the ones who don't want to do, and maybe that buyer is going to be able to get, a bit of a deal. So, but I know interest rates have gone up. I know a couple, things, there are some factors out there, contributing factors to a shift or what have you. But I really feel like if I see that we're not going to have a huge change in the fall market. So, right at this moment, I'm feeling like when you watch the news and you think, just give your opinion. Now I know why they don't, because I'm sure everyone will write me a little Christmas note saying, you were wrong or you were right. But I do feel that there's going to be a vibrancy to the fall market. So
I think in a little bit of a way, the conversation with buyers may differ slightly, just in the sense that you can kind of push them a little bit to not be so afraid of writing an offer, because they just automatically assume that they're going to get beat by 13 other people. I just don't think that's the case anymore. And of course, that still is happening on certain listings that are really special and turnkey. But I think that we're, as agents, as we're learning about what's in contract and what goes pending, we're being surprised by how certain properties are only getting 1 or 2 or 3 offers, which is low comparatively to how we've been seeing properties trade in the last 2 years. So I think being able to be a little bit more diligent with buyers and say, look, the activity's good. You might have to compete, but it's not going to be against a ton of people. It might just be a few people. So maybe it doesn't go as high as it would have. I think that you still have a really good shot at this. Let's play the game. I'll keep in touch with the listing agent. But let's go out and see it. Like, even if you want to wait until the weekend open house, or let's go out there on Thursday morning or whatever that may be. I think it's just going to take a little bit more encouragement as it shifts in the next 4 or 6 months.
I will say a game changer for those of you who are not doing it is customizing your grid on MLS, because you can customize it so that you show the number of offers on closed properties. When you do this and you send it to your buyers, you could say, look at what it was last year, where there were 6, 10, 4, 19 offers, and now it's 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3. So just being able to see that, I think, really lights their world on fire, which is great. I think one of the things that I'm doing, and I'm encouraging other buyers agents to do this, is show properties that are contingent. We're seeing a lot of DFTs right now. And for new people, those are deal falls through. I know newer agents haven't had to experience that, but we're seeing more of that happen. So if there's a property that they either made a play for or didn't get to go see and it goes contingent, try to get into backup position, because you don't know what's going to happen. And then also, if a home is just contingent, go see it anyway, right? And then you never know what's going to happen in this market. That's the shift that I'm seeing, is more DFTs.
mhm.
That's a really good point, which makes me think of, we're also seeing a lot of properties sit on the market, and many of them are proving that they're overpriced. And that's maybe seller assisted pricing, because they've watched the comps in their neighborhood, or for some properties that maybe aren't as comparable to theirs, but they're like, well, now I think my house should sell for $1,600 a square foot, $1,800 a square foot. And we're seeing these properties sit on the market. Now I'm finding myself making a ton of phone calls to agents with properties that have been sitting on the market for, a number of weeks or longer, saying, hey, is there room for a lower offer? And a lot of these agents are saying, bring me an offer, bring me anything, as long as it's reasonable, bring me an offer. So I'm finding that there's an interesting shift in the pricing seller perspective, because it's actually hurting sellers if they overprice their home, just like it always did if you overprice your home even pre-COVID. But if you overprice your home, you're sitting on the market and you're getting less than you could have, maybe if you had more strategically priced it in maybe the middle range of the comps, and let people identify and connect with that price point and then bid it up from there. I think that I think we're going to still see a lot of that in the coming months. So there's also opportunities to get those properties for maybe some great deals for our buyers too.
Well, on that note, you know, sometimes the listing agent doesn't know. When you say, is there room for me to
Sure.
come in for really, they might think, oh my gosh, the seller was so adamant, you know, they had to get this price, but maybe 3 weeks have gone by or 4, and you just come in with an otherwise great offer, you know, and the sellers might surprise the listing agent and say, let's work with it. Or, and, you know, because the thing that we don't know is what goes on in other people's lives. The seller might have been in this time looking for property elsewhere and found one, or found that the market they're moving to is softer than they expected. So maybe they didn't have to hold so tight to their listing. And we don't, and those are all the things we just can't predict representing buyers. The other thing I wanted to say is that if we go back, there are buyers that would have written offers that didn't because they figured they'd get priced out. It would be interesting to go back to those properties with, if you still have an active buyer who's missed out on some, and really look at, okay, here's where that one sold. Would you have done that? And kind of, like you say, Allie, encourage them. Like, it's worth it. Put your effort in, because you don't know where it's going to go. And, you know, I know there's writing fatigue after a while. It's like, well, why, who cares? You know, do I do a letter or not? Whatever. But the right one's going to hit. And I think to keep it going, to keep writing, and is always worth it. That's old saying of, you know, my dad used to say this, you know, you can't catch a fish unless you put your pole in the water or whatever. And it's kind of like that. It's like, depending on multiple offers or no offers, the buyer might as well try.
No,
so-
I'm glad you said that, Linda. I think that's true. And I feel like part of it too is a shift in mindset for us as agents. It's like, we've been conditioned to think like, okay, house comes on the market, it's going to be multiple offer situation. Don't bother, don't look, don't, you know, whatever. It's like, write the offer, just write the offer. It's so true. Even if the listing agent isn't sure if their seller would take it, sometimes they will. I think if we are in this slightly more normal environment, it's like, put the offer on the table. It's a good thing for everybody. And don't be afraid to do that. Also, I feel like proactively really paying attention to what's on the market and what's staying on the market is important. As you said, Allie, we can no longer just assume that we can glance at like the hot sheet and anything that could possibly be available has just popped onto the market. I think going on broker's tour is probably more important than ever, especially for pricing strategy as well, when representing sellers, right? Understanding the nuances, really seeing that house in person and being able to say to a seller, this is why this one went, you know, so much over asking, this is why this one didn't. So maybe part of it is like, as agents, I wouldn't say, I think that the frantic fast pace made our jobs more difficult in some ways, because as we all know, like keeping up with writing millions of offers in multiple bid situations and having to get to houses right away because somebody might throw in a preemptive in 2 seconds, all those things, that made our job so exhausting. I think that some of those struggles will maybe soften a little bit. And then there are other elements that maybe make our job more complicated, but also I think make us more essential as a part of the process that we'll kind of need to go back to. Now, I'm seeing a couple of good questions in the chat here. So I really like this one from Kathy Youngling. Do we still set an offer date or back to the day of offers as written? So we spoke a little bit about pace, but what do you think about offer dates specifically?
I think that most agents in Marin, I think it's not something that you should always assume you're going to get. I think that depending on the location and the property specifically, if it's a slam dunk property that you know many buyers are after, then it makes sense to set an offer date if you are very sure and confident that you're going to get multiple offers. If you're not sure, then I don't think setting an offer date is smart. You need to see how the activity goes over the first few days or even ride it through the weekend. Because if you set an offer date and one offer comes in, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because that agent's going to ask, well, how many other offers did you receive? Because that's going to affect me and my client's strategy, versus if you just take offers as they come, you could get an insane or a beautiful offer from somebody who just really loves that property without having to worry about competition. So again, I just think it's very property specific.
Mm-hmm. And back to the pre-marketing, if we do have, let's just call it a week of pre-marketing, that's a great time as a listing agent to be getting feedback from our colleagues and showings and kind of assess the energy around that house and know, kind of use that as a guide to setting a date or not. Yeah. And it might be that, you know, on some houses where the seller has done a ton of prep and they're ready and they just are like, I at least want an open house just to make sure people see it. Maybe it's, we just want to get through the weekend and we'll go from there. And then it kind of open-ended gives you a, you know, something to go by. And what's really hard, and this is just a little note, I think we've all been there at some point in our career where a listing agent will say offers Tuesday, and your buyer loves it, plans to go back and take a second look. Oh, it's pending. It's like, what the heck? Well, we got blown away. We got a great offer and the seller wanted to take it. I just think, especially going through how hard all of us work and how emotional it can be for buyers to go through this and excited they found a house and doing the right thing. Now I'm going to bring my parents by to look at it and it's gone. So I just want to say to each other, if we could kind of try our best to hold to whatever we put out there.
I think that's a really good reminder about professional courtesy and communication. I think that if your seller is very eager and anxious, obviously you work for the seller, you have to do what the seller wants. If they get a great offer and they want to take it, that's their right. But I think that put that in your confidential remarks. Say, we would like to wait until the weekend and maybe we'll set an offer date, or maybe you're setting one out of the gate and it's Tuesday, but the seller has the right to accept a preemptive offer. That way you're communicating with your agents. And if that way, you've got 10 disclosure packets out, but you get that fantastic preemptive offer, at least have the professional courtesy to notify the people with disclosure packets who have seen the property so far, so that they can give their buyer a window of time to say, do you want to participate in this? They've got a great offer. You have a short window. It's up to you. Leave it on them. So at least you're communicating and you're not put in a position by your colleagues to be like, sorry, you missed this one because we didn't act within 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well said. Well said.
And they both said everything that I would say about offers. I don't need to go on.
I just think it's nice to have a little bit of a breather. I think that the last 2 years have been exhausting for all of us. Everything has just gone so fast. So yes, it is nice to have a little bit of a breather and time, be like, be able to talk to your buyers and say, hey, you're welcome to go cruise the open houses, but also if you want to see it sooner, if you're really excited about this property, because maybe there is a potential that they would accept a preemptive offer, then maybe we should get you out there before the weekend. I think it's just about, for us, being able to communicate the fair message to a clear message to our clients so that they don't feel like they're missing something on behalf of us.
Right.
So we want to just be able to communicate what's going on with this particular listing so that they have a fair opportunity to bid on it if they love the house.
You know what? I just want to piggyback on that. You've just given me an idea that kind of back to thinking of the things we counsel our clients on. When we first meet with buyers, we might want to just have that conversation right then. It's, we never know. An offer, we could be find ourselves in the position where an agent said they'd wait till Tuesday, but it turns out, oh, they're blown away by the activity. They get offers. Be ready, be prepared, understand this could happen. I feel like it's just really our time to communicate and educate both buyers and sellers so that they feel more confident and prepared going in. And then if that did happen to us, we're like, you guys, this is one of those situations we talked about. I know you couldn't have gotten there before Saturday, but here, anyway, I just think it'll bode well for all of us and our clients if we really pump up the communication and.
Exactly. Get out in front of it. And remember that we're conduits of information, really. So as long as we've gotten out in front of it, if the situation comes up where something was snatched up pre-market, we have to pass that along, but we can do it in a way where they've been informed that could happen already. Right. And I think with buyers kind of going into this environment where, regardless of what statistics end up showing in, the coming months and what we actually see if things are going over or not, I think if especially national headlines continue to say that the market's softening, we are going to see buyers who are dead set on the point that the market's softening and kind of that sense of, I want to get a deal, that sort of thing. And I feel like it's going to be important to coach our buyers and remind our buyers, let's still be completely prepared, right? Like during COVID, every single buyer that I worked with, first thing that I would do is make sure they were fully underwritten and approved, to make sure that they understood the contract ahead of time. So that way, when the right house popped up, we were ready to go financially, and also ready to go in terms of they understand the paperwork, things like that. I think that's still important. Like we're still in this is still Marin County. We are still in a, low supply, high demand market. So making sure everyone's prepared for that. And if something ends up being a deal or a quiet situation, awesome, but we need to be still prepared for that, like fast-paced multiple offer situation.
Yeah.
So we have a question in here from Christopher Barrow. Christopher is wondering if we are seeing any difference in the lower price points versus higher price points. So kind of if we're talking, for sake of conversation, let's say homes below 1.5 and homes above, or even the luxury market, upwards of 3 or 4 million. Have you noticed any difference in kind of the mood out there in these different price points?
I think that it depends on the house. I really do. I think it's super property specific. That word was going to catch me up. I do. I think back to Allie's comment earlier that every house is going to have a different story around it based on location, what it is, what it offers. And so far, I don't think there's a difference to that so far.
I think that there is renewed energy in that buyer pool. I think people are excited. They're feeling hopeful and optimistic that they can finally afford a house right now. So I'm seeing lots of buyers or agents with buyers who are finally getting into a house and they're super excited. And I have to say, when it's over your Facebook feed, I'm happy for them. I wasn't even part of it. And I'm super happy that they got into a house. So I think that there's this renewed energy in that market segment.
I agree. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a buyer in that range because you kind of, you root for them and you want them to find a great home. But I agree with you. It's so property specific and how much work the property needs. It's still, people don't want to do a ton of work to a home. So if it needs a ton of work, then it may still sit, even if it is under $1 million, which is a great price point in Marin. But if it's a little bit more turnkey and dialed, then I think it's still getting good attention and usually multiple offers, but you just don't know anymore.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, another question. The holidays, like Thanksgiving this year, right? So we're kind of back into the rhythm of people traveling. And I think this summer, a big part of why things have been a little bit mellower is not only are we just traveling again as normal, but there's been a huge amount of pent up demand for that, right? I would say like almost all of my clients were gone for at least like 2 weeks of the summer.
Yeah.
Do we suspect that the same thing will happen this year around the winter holidays? And how important do you think pricing will be or timing will be going into the fall?
I just feel like we're in a more traditional selling rhythm and season rhythm with selling. And that means, if that's true, that things slow down in the holidays. And I think that, if you have a listing, you want to get it on the market really before November 1st, if you can, because of that. The one thing that's interesting is there are some houses that will sell well. I don't care if you put them on December 24th, it's just, you've got a craftsman in, whatever, the seminary, and it's, the whatever, it's just going to go. And I think there's that situation, but in general, it's, things are going to slow down at the holidays. And oddly enough, in one of the, more kind of steady, calm years, I'll never forget, I had two buyers that bought over the Christmas break. And they did it because they had time. They didn't travel. They had time off from work. They happened to, go and see a property. Family was visiting, so they had the support and encouragement of their family. So I think in general, holidays slow things down, but there's those you never know, kind of factors. And we're really fortunate to live in a place with such even-keeled weather. I mean, even our big storms, nothing to South Dakota or whatever, Boston. So I think it's a generality that's safe to go by, but to be open to the exceptions that are going to happen.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that we're going to see that typical slowdown. I think to strategize with your sellers, it's not always the best time to go on in the dead of summer or in the middle of winter, because people are they're distracted. They're out of town. So if you're really going after that multiple offer situation, you want as many eyes on your property as possible. So if that's maybe less likely to happen because for some whatever reason you have to sell your house in the middle of December, then maybe an off-market approach makes more sense for your particular home. I think that what we've seen coming out of July is that there's been already quite a spike of off-market properties to hit our networking groups because sellers are unsure. They want that price, that, let's say, COVID price, and they want to test a price before being vulnerable to the market and maybe sitting on the market like we've seen some other listings do. So it'll be interesting to see, in the past 2 years, off-market homes were very few and far between. Well, now we're definitely seeing them come back. So I think communicating with our colleagues to bring our buyers those opportunities can still match up buyers and sellers very well. But I think that that's going to be something that we see in these off seasons like we used to.
Jen, I have a question for you on that because of your Barry's involvement. What do you think the best way to get an off-market listing, get the word out to the most people is utilizing
Coming soon?
MLS?
I think coming soon is key. I've been watching this for a couple of years, and I really feel like buyers are driving this market. It's amazing to see clients put it on Top Agent or Facebook group or in their private network, and it doesn't really get traction. A listing doesn't get traction. Once it goes active on MLS, the buyers, I think, are out there on their computers driving the searches. So even putting it on coming soon doesn't really do much because it doesn't go to third parties. The buyers who are not working with agents don't get to see that. But at least it opens it up to a wider network of agents. But I think you got to put, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Barry's person, but I've just been studying it. And I think that buyers are driving it. So you should put it on MLS.
Yeah, and not be afraid of that, right?
Right. I mean, and it sucks because sometimes the property isn't ready to go on MLS, right? Like it's you don't have pictures or whatever, but I guarantee if you send your clients through your sellers through the process of prepping and getting it ready and then launching it on MLS, you'll do better. They'll do better financially.
I agree with you. And I think that that's why coming soon is a really fantastic option. And that's what I've utilized in actually July, because all of a sudden July was showing to be not a very active market. And I had 2 listings at the same time getting ready to launch. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, hold on, we shouldn't go on the market. It seems that there's a lot of people out of town. So I utilized coming soon and was able to spread the word via coming soon, via TAN, via Facebook group, email database. So I think that utilizing all of those avenues is super important. And if you just catch yourself in a time with your seller that they have to sell for one reason or another, maybe there's, something going on in their world, but it's just falling in the middle of December, it's your job to help your seller get the most money for their home or to sell most successfully that fits with them. And if it could potentially hurt their listing to go on the market in the middle of or a week before Christmas, then utilizing coming soon, utilizing the agent community is a great path as you maybe prep the home and prepare for an on-market strategy should you not successfully sell the house in that time frame.
Right.
Yes.
And strategically speaking, the reason why we do that is because if a house is on the market for a very long time, because maybe the seasonality is not quite right, or maybe it hasn't been prepped yet because of seller circumstances, accumulating days on market can have an effect on the price. So that's where coming soon and pre-market networking is a very good kind of tool. And I think we as agents, Jen, you're absolutely right that it seems to me that if a house isn't publicly exposed, it doesn't sell. And I think part of it's because we as agents have been so overloaded with work in the last couple of years that there has been less focus on like, oh, let me talk to my colleagues. Let's go on tour and talk to people. Let's find out what's coming up. Let's go to the office meeting. And so these pre-market coming soon properties, like we as agents, I think it's good for us to remember, hey, let's keep an eye out and almost kind of support each other in that way. So we are getting close to 11. So I'm going to start wrapping things up here, although I feel like this conversation could continue all day. It's the amount of nuance is amazing. But any parting words, any parting thoughts, advice going into fall? Let's see, Linda, should I start with you?
Sure. I will say this, that one thing is, if you do have a seller resisting, do I really have to do all that prep? Do I really have to go show them property in the same price range and area that they're going to be coming on the market, so they can get a first. There's nothing like being inside of a property, walking the grounds and really to see it. And then you can have an even more educated conversation with the seller's more educated, talking to you about how you should price their house, and then to talk really thoroughly about strategic versus transparent pricing. How are we going to approach this? What can you live with? What are you going to be okay with if we take a price, we set a price and we don't get crazy multiple offer? What are you all right with? Because that's going to guide how you price. So
I like it. Allie?
I think that in the next, well, always, but in the next 6 months, I think communication is key with our colleagues. I think that whether that be putting in the confidential remarks what your offer plans are, or your pricing strategy, whether it might be transparent pricing or strategic pricing, I think that putting that kind of information in the MLS when you launch a listing, so that you're communicating with your colleagues so that they can relay that message to their buyers, is really going to help all of us. And I think as we shift into whatever this normal new market is, communicating with the listing agent on the other side, I think we might be a little bit surprised at times that a property isn't receiving 15 offers, but maybe it's more like 1 or 2. So I think it's going to take a lot of communication, and I'm excited to chat lots with all of you.
Thank you, Allie. Jen?
I think these markets make us better agents. I think it was, I read like nationally, 80% of existing realtors have never experienced a downturn market. That number is going to be a lot lower here in Marin, but it's still probably pretty high. I think they make us stronger. They make us sharpen our skills. Everything matters, from prepping and marketing and communicating with clients and communicating with the agent community. All of these skills that we develop, or that we will soon develop, are really going to help our business. So I think my parting shot would be to kind of look at our business and see what we need to do as agents to do a better job, and to make this job, to make the client experience great. Gone are the days where we stuck a sign in the yard and then collected our commission check 21 days later. We have to earn it now. We have to grind. We have to work for it. Not that market a couple of years ago, we weren't working for it, but we just have to improve our skill set. So I think that that's really what I would convey to everybody, is whether you're an accountability group or your colleagues, learn the role playing, learn how to talk about price reductions with your sellers, and look at, try to figure out your wrap for talking buyers into seeing contingent properties, or whatever it is. This is a good time to sharpen our skills.
I like it. Let's sharpen our skills. Let's lean on each other, keep in constant communication. And also, when communicating with clients, something that I think we can all agree is key is, if we are indeed moving into a more normal market, normal in Marin is a pretty good thing. It's all about supply and demand. We have a low amount of inventory, a lot of demand, and certain geographical constraints that mean, unless we build a lot more houses, that is a balance that has historically been true in Marin for decades. And I think that communicating with each other, and also using this opportunity to kind of be that voice of calm, and to help consumers, both buyers and sellers, not feel stressed, but almost recognize this is a good thing. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of as a seller, as long as you are working with a good agent and doing all of the steps and not being lazy, then, probably be okay. And same thing for buyers, nothing to be afraid of. That burnout feeling that was happening all spring, there might be a little bit of relief from that. But again, still being prepared, and still being on top of things, and still listening to all of our wise words and advice. So, so with that, I will say thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. This is awesome. And thank you to everyone who joined us. I feel like the fall season is going to be, I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be kind of fun to all work together and sort of see how things pan out.
Agree.
Definitely.
Yes, and one more thank you to our sponsor, Mary Jo LaFay of Mutual of Omaha. We really appreciate your support, Mary Jo.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody, go out there and do your thing.
Thanks,
All right.
Logan.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you out there.